We are talking about house training today, and we're going to talk about this because some dogs come home and they seem to just house train themselves. They're so easy. And other dogs come home and they seem like an unsolvable problem. Um, if you have had the former, I am so glad for you because this is not the problem I would like to be dealing with in my own home. And so this one is for everybody else with the tricky dogs. If you don't know me, I am Jennifer. I am a dog trainer and behavior consultant, and my job is to help people have a more magical relationship with their dog. And potty training problems can definitely cause a huge dent in your relationship with your dog. Most of us will really come to resent living in a house that smells like urine eventually. In fact, house training is one of the most common reasons that pets are surrendered or rehomed. So this is a huge problem. And when it's easy, like I said, but when you do come across that one dog who's just a tough nut to crack, if you will, you'll be glad to have the following information. So, and of course, as we go along, anybody, if you have questions, I would love to address them specifically. I feel like we have a lot of stuff to cover today, but if you have questions about your specific situation, I would love to be able to help. So let's talk it out, the nitty-gritty of house training. Let's first start with the basic outline of a house training plan. To keep it simple, I think about this in 4 steps. We start with preventing accidents, which means this could encompass anything that you have to do to make sure that the dog isn't capable, isn't able to have an accident, which mostly comes down to confinement and supervision. Now, confinement could mean using a crate. I love to use crates for house training. They are your best house training tool if your dog is crate trained. So crate training is a great place to start. But puppies are very easy to crate train. So if you're starting house training with a puppy, it's a perfect combination to just do both at once. But yeah, so because dogs are naturally clean animals who prefer not to use the bathroom in the same areas where they eat and sleep, if you have a properly sized crate, which means just large enough for them to comfortably sit, stand up, turn around, and lie down, but no larger, that crate can serve quite nicely to prevent house training accidents. If you choose not to use a crate, or your dog is not crate trained yet, or you just like to have more options, another very useful tool for this first step, the prevention piece, is a tether. And when I say tether, I really just mean a leash that is attached to both your dog and you. Keeping them on a pretty short leash close to you will also, most dogs would prefer not to go right next to you. So in a lot of cases, this can also prevent dogs from going without letting you know first, without showing you some signs with their body language that they're about to go. If they will go close to you, at least you're right there and you're more likely to pick up on those signs and rush them outside. So confine. Crates and tethers are the best tools. If they are not crated or tethered, they should at the very least be in a dog-proof pen or a dog-proof room, but a very small area of your home, so that they can't be running off, hiding, and making accidents in areas that you don't catch until later. The more accidents that they have, the longer house training is going to take, which is why it is the very first piece I address in a house training plan, because we have to make sure that that dog is managed so tightly that they just can't, they just can't, they can't have an accident. If you are not, if crating and tethering is not an option, and you are not also available to actively supervise. So when I talk about dogs and I use the word supervise, I always feel it's really, really important to define the word supervise, because supervision can fall along a spectrum. You could say that being in the same room as the dog counts as supervision on one end of the spectrum, but that could also mean that you are talking on the phone or playing a game, watching TV, cooking, or somehow your attention is otherwise elsewhere, but you're in the same room. That's not what I mean when I talk about supervision as it pertains to dog training. Supervision is active supervision, and when it comes to potty training, I literally mean your eyes are on the dog every second. If you are going to take your eyes off that dog for a second, they go in the crate, they go in the pen, or they get tethered. That's what we mean when we say strict management or prevention. Today I'll probably use those words interchangeably. Management, prevention. Management, as used by dog trainers, generally just means whatever strategies and tools you have to use to make sure that the unwanted behavior can't occur, that the dog doesn't have the option to make the wrong choice, because we don't want to put dogs in a position where, or you in a position really, where you feel like you need to take some sort of punitive action. It's best to avoid those problems altogether by doing all we can to prevent. And this goes a long way with any behavior problem where habit formation is a huge part of it. And with potty training, that's exactly what we're talking about. So, yeah, so crate, tether, supervise, or if you are going to be out for long periods of the day, also recommend recruiting other household members to help you manage, and they should also understand fully all of the pieces, because like I said, what we're talking about today is the tricky dogs. The ones that are easy, those people aren't here watching me, right? If your dog came home and they were easy to train, to house train, they don't need to seek extra help. So if you're watching this, likely you're going to be able to use the extra tips. And so yeah, making sure that everybody in the house is on board and understands what a real house training plan looks like. And if you don't live with anyone else, or don't want to rely on other household members, recruit neighbors, friends, or a professional drop-in pet sitter who can come in and do potty breaks during the day if you have to be out for long periods. This is especially helpful for puppies or very young dogs who physically can't hold it as long as an adult dog. So yeah, this first piece, the prevention piece, there's a lot to it. And if your dog, if you feel like you've already implemented all of these things, and yet somehow your dog is still having accidents, that might be a great time to reach out to a professional to maybe figure out ways to close the gaps, so that we're not letting something slip. Let's see. Jessie says, yeah, like taking the puppy out every hour. She would go any place, even in her pen. Yeah. And we're gonna, yeah, the schedule is the next piece. So thank you for leading me into that, Jessie. And going in the pen is, we should talk specifically about that. But let me first go into step 2, which is learning to anticipate your dog's potty patterns. So you want to take them out regularly, and dogs, depending on the individual, and especially on their age, they may have to go at different frequencies. So generally, young puppies, most of us will expect that young puppies have to go more often. For baby puppies, I'm talking, our 2 to 4 month olds, to start here, they may go as often as every 15 to 30 minutes. if you have a puppy that's going every 15 minutes, that does make your job harder. But the idea is we just have to learn how often does the dog you have at home, how often do they tend to go? And then also understanding what things might increase or decrease the likelihood that that they might be going more or less frequently. So the number of or the frequency of urinations in a day could be affected, obviously, by how much they're drinking, by the ambient temperature. On hot days, also, they're likely to be drinking more. So again, those two kind of go hand in hand. But also how much they are awake. Dogs will sleep a lot if given the opportunity, but puppies need a lot of sleep. I'm talking like 18 hours a day, a lot of sleep. And if they're awake, they're likely to be going more often. Also, a huge factor is their activity level. And again, I am focusing a lot on puppies here, but this also applies to adults. How active they are, or rather, if they are very active, they're likely to have to pee more often. So if you've got them out and you are playing a lot of games and you've got them moving around and running a lot, they're likely to go more often than that 15 to 30 minutes or even an hour like Jesse's pup is right now. I'm sorry, Diz. His favorite spot under the desk, and he's like, "You're moving your feet. I don't like it." So yeah, we need to find out how often your dog is likely to go, and then just kind of be aware of how active they are and how much they're drinking. As far as number twos, puppies they'll go more than adults. They tend to go about 3 to 5 times a day. Adults will go less, more like 1 to 3 times a day. But there's room for individuals to be themselves here too, because some dogs will go all in one go, and some dogs will go, they'll do 3 poops, 5 minutes apart. For those dogs, you take them out, they go, and you think like, okay, great, we got number 2 off the list, check. They pee, great, he's free, he should be able to be loose in the house, right? But if you've got a 2x pooper or a 3x pooper, you may just want to plan on giving them more time to be outside, to do all of their business before bringing them in, unless you're prepared to crate them again. So yeah, and another tip, if you do have one of those dogs, is, again, because activity tends to get things moving, if you take your dog out and it's a potty trip, you just want them to go, sometimes getting them moving can kind of hurry things along. But yeah, the message here is learn your dog's patterns. If you're struggling quite a bit with number 2 house training, another good idea would be to do feedings at set times. Feed 2 or 3 times a day at the same time every day, so that you can learn to predict when they may need to go, because being able to predict is a huge part in solving those tricky dogs when they present us with house training problems. Also, if this has been a struggle and you just haven't figured it out quite yet, keeping a log can be very helpful too, so that you can start to see what times of day they tend to go, especially in relation to your established meal times, right? There's an app called Puddle and Pile that I like to use, that will, it's not incredibly intuitive, the data interpretation part, but once you figure it out, or maybe that was just me, I don't know, I was didn't quite figure out what they were trying to tell me at first, but once you do, you can see that it'll give you a percentage, like a likelihood of, at a certain time of day, how likely is your dog to go around this time. So it can help you with predicting your dog's potties. Now, just a word about how long, with combining prediction anticipation piece with the prevention piece. When it comes to very young puppies, the general rule of thumb as far as how long they can physically hold it is their age in months plus 1 would be the number of hours that they could potentially physically hold it. Now, I don't recommend crating a puppy for even that long. So if you've got a 3-month-old puppy, you would get, so they should be able to hold it for 4 hours, but I would not crate a puppy for 4 hours. That just kind of gives you the max amount of time that a puppy might be able to be able to hold it if they were crated and felt like they had to. That rule of thumb is more helpful in determining, like, if you had to leave and your puppy was crated and you came back and there was an accident in the crate or in the pen or in an area where they don't normally go, I feel like that tip is more to help us understand that it's absolutely not their fault. Their little bodies physically cannot hold it, and in fact, puppies don't even have full sphincter control until they're about 16 weeks old. So that it just gives you a little bit more information about what they're physically capable of. There tends to be a lot of myth and hooey thrown around about house training in dogs. People say, you know, they will pee or poop out of spite, or they look guilty, or, you know, they want to impose all of these human emotions and cognitive abilities onto dogs that they just don't have. So I'll say it here. If your dog is, even if they've previously been house trained, if they are having potty accidents in the home, it is not out of spite. They are not trying to get revenge. They're not angry at you. And if you come home and they have accidents and they look guilty, that is not a look of guilt. That is a look of fear, and it is learned, and it is something we should probably talk about another day, because I could go on and on and on about it, but just take my word on it for now. It's not guilt. Let's see. Hi, April. We're both working from home right now. Well, welcome. Thank you for joining. And you do a midday potty break with Norin. Maybe it's a good idea to try to get him to work toward a more regular schedule of both of us being gone before you transition to working at offices. Yeah, it's a really good idea. There's a lot of things that our dogs are going to have to adjust to, right, when things do go back to normal. So potty house training is absolutely one of them. You could, for some dogs, it may not be necessary, meaning they may be able to hold it. So I was just talking about, you know, how long puppies were physically able to hold it. And I like to tell people, you know, even, you know, once they're beyond 7 months, this rule no longer applies, because the maximum I would expect a dog to have to hold their urine is about 8 hours. And it's a personal preference of mine, but I prefer that a dog not have to hold it that long. If at all possible. But I know that people have to go to work, and so you know, maximum 8 hours for me. That's my preference. So because I mean, it's uncomfortable for them to have to hold their pee too, right? Like, just like it would be for us. So but if you eventually will transition back to full days where you don't have anyone coming in to let the dog out, then yeah, potentially that's a great idea, and a great suggestion for anybody else who's watching. So let's see. So yes, so that's about like maximum durations that I would expect a dog to hold it. And I just want to reiterate here that I am talking about a maximum. It's not recommended times necessarily. It's just, I would not expect a dog to hold it for longer than that. So let's see. So yeah, if you are having trouble predicting, keeping a log, feeding at set times. Now, feeding at specific times when it comes to their food. However, when it comes to water, some water on a certain schedule, but when they're looking to go, either one, they'll on or see this behavior, you'll start to see a subtle sniffing because something's interesting to smell, right? Too late. And also, if you want to be fancy and you want to put potty behaviors on cue, you would just insert a potty cue into that sequence right before they're about to go. So don't go outside and say it. Go outside, wait until you see those, the sniffing, the circling, whatever your dog's body language indicators that they are about to start. And when they start to go, that's when you say your cue and then reward. And then you've got this nice little sequence that you're going to make sure happens every time. It's going to be cue, they go potty, they get rewarded, right? Smushed together in time. And that's really handy. You may not necessarily need your dog to know a cue to go potty, but it is handy, I will tell you that. Wagging Tails, hi, welcome, thank you for coming, and thanks for commenting. So yeah, oh, and do you have any potty training tips that you'd like to share with anybody? We've got a lot to cover today, but there's always more, right? So, Diz, why don't you go lie down on your bed, bud? This is like a new thing. Anywhere I'm sitting at the desk downstairs, at the table, like he just has to be like underneath and at my feet. But he hates feet being around him, and it makes no sense. But things don't always make sense with our dogs. So, okay. So, oh, and here's another thing, guys, which I have seen go so horribly wrong. When we mix up the order of events in training, we can sometimes achieve the opposite results that we want. And so one of the ways that you can see this play out is when people take their dogs on a walk with the idea of getting them to go potty, and then because we didn't really want to be out on a walk at that moment, sorry, my hair is like in my eyeball, we take them out and walk and walk and walk and walk until they go potty, and then we go home. And if that is the pattern that your dog picks up and your dog happens to like to be out on walks, guess what they are going to learn to do? Hold it and hold it and hold it for as long as they possibly can so that they can get the longest walk possible. So what you can do to avoid this from the beginning is take them out to a spot and wait for them to go potty. And when they do, then go on a little walk. Or if you're not walking, then play with them. Then do something fun. And especially if it involves them getting to spend time outside, that's really nice. Can be very reinforcing. But try to make the potty happen first, then the fun. Wagging Tail says my dog is the same with the feet, with the going under the desk. That's so funny. Yeah. So yeah, that's my dear friend has I have seen her dogs. They will milk her for the longest walks ever. And maybe she'll kill me for talking about her because I'm going to talk about her again later in this show because we have a funny story. But yeah, I mean, her little schnauzer, man, this dog will get so much walk for that potty. And I wonder, I didn't meet the dog till she was an adult, but I kind of wonder if we could work with her to get her to go faster by taking her for walks afterwards. Who knows? Anyway, so let's see. Yeah, treat and play and walk after they go. And then, so okay, just to review, our steps were, again, prevent accidents, predict when your dog is about to go, reward them when they go in the right spot, and then, of course, if there are accidents, make sure that you clean thoroughly, pick up the poo, soak up the urine, and then the very important part, not the most important part because you got to do the rest of it too, but also very important is to use an enzymatic cleaner. Even if you clean it so well that you can't smell it, dogs' noses are incredible and they will be able to pick up molecules of urine, and because dogs like to go where they smell urine already, it will encourage them to go in those same spots in your home, so make sure that you use an enzymatic cleaner. But just to circle back around, if you do a really, really, really good job of preventing the accidents in the first place, you'll have to do less of the cleaning and worrying about the recurrence of those accidents. Um, and I stress this so much, you guys, because if you have that trickier dog, then you have to follow this plan to the letter. You can't be as relaxed about it as someone who's got the easier dog, because otherwise you're going to continue to muddle through, and it's going to take longer, and you're going to get more frustrated. And I don't want you to feel that frustration and resentment build towards your dog. Yes, it requires a lot of effort of us up front, but it's absolutely worth it just to get them trained so much quicker. That's honestly true of most training. The more you do up front, the easier it is down the road. So yeah, you gotta manage like crazy. Do all of the prevention things. Again, remember the supervision piece we talked about at the beginning? Supervision means eyes on the dog. Otherwise, they're crated, they're tethered, or they're outside. And build a really solid reinforcement history for going where you want them to go. You got to reward the heck out of all potties. So that's the plan. Again, prevent, predict, reward, and clean up. But there's a lot of other factors that can come into play when it comes to house training. And we'll just kind of knock these out one by one. Again, if you have questions, or you're having a specific issue, please ask them. Please let me know in the comments, so that we can talk about what you need to talk about. But if I don't have any comments, I'll just keep going through. So a question I get a lot is about puppy potty pads, or indoor potty areas. You will get different advice depending on who you ask. If you're asking me, I prefer not to use indoor potty areas whatsoever. Because again, if our goal is to teach the dog to discriminate between potties inside and potties outside, the more times you allow them to go inside, the longer it's going to take. But if you do want to use them, there's a couple things that you can do to mitigate that stretching of the potty training process. Keep it in their puppy pen. It should only be used in their long-term confinement area. If you do choose to use them, I recommend using either turf grass or real grass, rather than just the pad by itself. Yes, turf grass might be more difficult to clean. However, when it comes to potty training, dogs tend to they develop a preference, right? The texture that they feel underneath their paws is one of the biggest cues that tells them you can go here. And those pads are very soft and carpety, and unlike anything they're going to encounter outside at the very least. And they like, naturally, dogs like to go on very porous surfaces. So it's going to be attractive, the puppy potty pad. But we don't necessarily want to encourage them to go on surfaces that feel like that. Whereas you can get turf grass little trays that they can go in. You can put the pad under it so that it can soak it up, makes cleaning easier, but so that the dog is feeling that turf grass under their paws. Or there are some companies, I mean, you just can't believe what's out there these days, but there are some companies that will ship you periodically a cardboard box with a hunk of sod, real grass on top of dirt that your dog can go in. They use it for a couple of weeks, you throw it out, they send you another one. That's a real thing. For anybody who lives maybe in high-rise apartments or too many floors up that it's just more of a hassle than you want to deal with, that could be a good option. Some people, if they're living up on the 20th floor, they may want to have a long-term indoor option where the dog can go. So those are good options for that. But either way, I don't recommend the pads for under your dog's feet. And if you're already using them, you could use the pad by bringing a soiled pad outside when they are likely to have to go, and then slowly making the size of that pad smaller. So one way to kind of phase the puppy potty pad out. But again, if you don't have to, or if you don't really want to, don't even bother with that process. It's an extra step that you don't necessarily have to go through. Let's see. So I'll explain a little bit more about so we talked about the steps, those the 4 steps of potty training. But when do you start to loosen that prevention piece? The very tightly managed, crated, tethered, outside, or supervised. When can you start to give them more freedom? The baseline rule that I like to use is I will manage very tightly for 3 weeks, or until I can get 3 weeks of solid, no accidents, meaning not, oh, in the last 3 weeks he only had 1 or 2 accidents. No, 3 solid weeks of no accidents. At that point, then you can start to give them a little bit more freedom, give them a little bit more time to be out of confinement. But still, I would not give that dog full access to the house. I would still keep them, gradually open up more and more space of the home, gradually give them more time that is unsupervised. Potty training is not black and white. It's not, okay, we did it and now he's trained and it's done. Again, like all training, behavior is like a muscle. You gotta keep working out if you want it to be strong. So tightly manage for at least 3 weeks until you get 3 weeks of no accidents, and then gradually open it up. But when is a dog, when is a dog fully house trained? Frankly, I don't know that I ever trust a dog to be fully house trained, to be quite honest. No, it's not. There's a point at which I don't worry so much about it, but I also don't just completely stop. I continue for the life of the dog, if you ask me, to reward them for potties in the right spots, which means, and I do this because of the possibility of regressions. Regressions will happen, and because house training is not a fun problem to have, and because it's very easy to just keep a container of treats by the door, and because I know that one day I will freak out if there's an accident and potentially scare my dog, and I need that I want as strong of a positive reinforcement history for that behavior as I possibly can, in case I have to take a withdrawal from that bank account. If you've watched some of my other streams, I talk about behaviors and reward and punishment in terms of like a bank account. The more you reward that behavior, the more money you have in that account, so that you never have to take a withdrawal and go into the red, right? Yeah, so for all of those reasons, I recommend continuing to reward potties forever. Now, if you're paying very close attention, you may have noticed that I said when you're doing initial potty training, that you have to have those treats on you, you have to be out with the dog, and you have to reward them the second they are finished pottying. However, again, once you've had weeks and then months of no accidents in the house, you can start to relax. I'm not saying that you have to be on guard all the time forever. No. But continue to reward. Eventually, once your dog has made that connection, they're like, oh, yes, I go here and then I get treats. As they learn, and the more and more times that you've done this, I'm talking hundreds, thousands of times, then that time between the potty and the reward can increase, at which point it doesn't matter if you've got the treats on you. At that point, you can tell them, go outside, go potty, and they will run to you and get their treat inside. That's absolutely okay. It's just that you don't want to start that way. They will have a much harder time making the connections unless you've got them on you. So yes, once they're done, they're potty trained, continue to reward, but you don't have to like stand over them and do that forever. No. But let's talk about regressions. So I said I reward forever because of the possibility of regressions. And regressions are interesting. So um, if in a dog that you would have said was completely house trained, they had not had an accident in years, if they start to have accidents, that is usually a sign that it's something medical going on. So you want to rule out medical issues first before tackling it as a behavioral issue. Yeah, once you've visited the vet, they've run a bunch of tests, then maybe we can talk about different ways to address it from a training or behavioral standpoint. However, a lot of the behavioral issues that could be causing regressions in dogs involve fear and anxiety, which may involve medications. You're probably going to want your vet to be in on the conversation anyway. So regressions in an adult dog who is previously house trained definitely warrants a visit to the vet first before you call a trainer. And let's see. Yep. Oh, sorry. One other thing that can cause regressions is major life changes. So if you move homes, I would not wait for the first accident to happen. Anytime you're moving environments like that, expect to do an abbreviated version of your initial house training plan in the new space. This is how I am anytime I take my dog to anywhere else, anywhere that we're going to be indoors, where I would be truly embarrassed if an accident happened. I go there as if he is not house trained at all, which again means he is confined or actively supervised. And that is because of the difficulty that dogs have in generalizing behaviors. So when we house train a dog in your home, you know, they've maybe even grown up from puppy to adulthood, and you're like, great, he's house trained, and you take him to a friend's house and he has an accident, and you're just like, what in the world? Like, he must, I don't know what explanation you would have for that. But it's because dogs don't necessarily, what you're teaching them isn't always what they're learning. And what I mean by that is, in our minds, we might be thinking, yes, we've taught them the difference between inside and outside, and that potties should go outside. That is good, inside is bad. No. But what the dog might have learned is that spot is a good place to go, and I'm not going to go inside because I'd rather trade it for treats outside. But in a new place, it's not that they've categorized like inside and outside. The new place, they're like, I've never been here before. I don't know where to go. So anytime you're in a new place, great idea to first, if you're bringing your dog with you, you should first take them to a spot that they can go, make sure to reward them for it in the new space, and then go inside. And just, again, keep a close eye. Don't let them wander off, unless you don't mind having to apologize to your friends. But frankly, if I'm the friend, I would appreciate it if you if you just treated any new space as a new training task. And the thing is, the more places that you go and do this, the easier it is going to be, or the more likely they are to eventually be able to generalize. Yes, I go on grass. I don't go on the carpets. But usually, when we're teaching a dog and we want them to generalize any sort of behavior, I recommend that dog go through the process of training in at least 5 locations. And I'm not talking about just house training. This is all training. I recommend that they go through the steps in 5 different locations before they really before it, I don't like to say clicks, because again, training is like a workout. Training is like your muscles, and muscles don't ever just like click, we're strong. No. Dogs don't think of, at least it's not helpful for us to think of dogs in terms of they know it or no, they don't. Black and white thinking, not helpful. So think of it more like a muscle, and take them out, practice in many different locations. And don't worry, the process of training any new thing, it gets easier and shorter each time, right? It's not like it's going to be just as difficult the first time till you get to time number 5. No, it gets easier each time, but the more places that you do that and you're just prepared to handle accidents, the more likely that you're going to get super, super good house training faster. April says, regression happened when we took on a foster last summer who'd been through a terrible surgery experience and then came to us to decompress and heal. Poor girl, but she got back on schedule in a few days. Yes, again, you know, medical things, any major life event that the dog is going through is a potential opportunity for a potty training regression to happen. And again, you know, like a lot, when stuff is going on in their bodies, they can't tell us with words. And we don't always pick up on these subtle differences in behavior right away, or you know, dogs may even, if it's something like pain, like a urinary tract infection, or bladder stones, or I mean, I don't know, there's a variety of medical conditions that could cause house training issues. Sometimes they try to hide it if they are hurting too. So yeah, never blame the dog. It's but yeah, absolutely. I mean, and April, in your experience with this foster girl, I mean, yeah, surgery, she's going through healing, and she's in a new space. That's a lot. That is a lot. But I'm sure she was lucky to have a very, very caring and compassionate foster family to help her through that. And April, yes, this is helpful for when you're going on your trip. New place. Yes, as soon as you get there, go and find out or seek out a place where you're like, okay, we'll be able to take him here and reward him before. Are you staying? We've done a little bit of traveling with Dizzy, and we've stayed in some Airbnbs and we've stayed in some hotels and run into some different sorts of issues. Sometimes with hotels, finding like an appropriate potty spot is difficult, even if the hotel is pet friendly. I'm not sure where you guys are staying, but yeah, I definitely, going forward, if I have the option, Dizzy and I will be staying in an Airbnb versus a hotel, because also he has an issue with, like, he hears sounds and he barks and then I don't get any sleep and it's awful, and it's like, yeah, no. Oh, you are staying in a hotel. I hope it goes well. Hopefully Noren's not the type to, like, I'll be very alert to every little sound, because boy, we tried everything with Dizzy and it was like I was exhausted. I didn't sleep. So yeah, but from what I've seen of Noren, he looks a lot more chill than Dizzy, so hopefully you'll do better. Okay, let's see. So yes, regressions is not the dog's fault, but definitely seek out a vet and try and figure out problems that way, unless it's been a major life event and you know, this is probably a cause for a regression. We'll just train through it. No problem. Yes, maintain. We talked about generalization. Okay. So here's a thing that I see happen very often. And what it comes down to is we feel the need, often humans feel the need to either interrupt and or punish a dog for going potty in the house. And there are multiple problems with this, but one of them is something called reverse house training. And this is where you have interrupted or punished the dog while they are going potty and inadvertently taught them that you are scary to go potty in front of. And then the dog doesn't want to go in front of you. So when you take them out to their spot, they don't go. They hold it, and then you bring them back in, and you're like, well, I guess they didn't have to go, and they wander off and they go immediately. I hear this all the time, and it's preventable, but it requires some thought. So if you can't interrupt or punish, how are you ever going to tell them that? I mean, yes, we're telling them to go, you know, it's good, it's awesome because you get treats and play and walks if you go outside, but how do we tell a dog not to go inside, right? That's always the question when it's dogs are doing things we don't like. It's how do I tell him it's wrong? But here's the thing, and I'll address these one at a time. We'll talk about punishment first. When it comes to house training, just never punish. there's never a reason to punish a dog for potty accidents, despite what it sometimes looks like, and despite what someone else may have told you. Punishing for accidents will never teach the dog what you think it will. They are much more likely to just learn that you are unpredictably scary, and going potty is kind of, you put yourself in a vulnerable position. So if I'm the dog and I don't know when you're gonna just go crazy on me like that, I'm definitely not going in front of you. Inside or outside, doesn't matter. So we think, he's learning not to go inside, but really most dogs just learn that we're scary and unpredictable, which actually does a huge withdrawal. If we go back to our trust account, our trust bank account with our dog, that is a huge withdrawal of trust with our dog. And trust is your most valuable thing that you can have with your dog. You don't want to do anything to damage it. And there will be things that happen that damage it, that occur naturally. So anything that you have control over, don't break trust with your dog. Yeah, and here's the thing is, if you don't catch the dog in the act, meaning if you see that they've gone potty and you want to punish them, if it is more than a second late anyway, they're not going to make the connection between that punishment and the behavior. Remember how we talked about them? We need to reward immediately as they finish going, because that time interval between behavior and reward has to be so close for them to make that connection. Same thing goes for punishments. If the behavior occurred and the punishment occurred more than a second later, they're not going to make that connection, which means you are just being big and scary for no reason, which is just abuse, really. So there's never a reason to punish a dog for house training. If you know me, you're probably saying, Jennifer, you say there's never a reason to punish a dog ever. Well, yes, that's true. But just in this case, when it comes to house training, I'm trying to save you a world of hurt. So just don't do it. So that's punishment. And I said I was going to talk about these separately. So let's talk about interruptions. So what happens when you see your dog, you catch them in the act, you see them going? I can only speak for myself, but maybe you can relate. When that happens, all of my training tends to go out the window. I'm like, no, I scream and I run over and I try and grab the dog and we take all this stuff. That is also very scary and unpredictable and strange to dogs, right? Which means it could be serving the same function as a punishment. So I don't recommend interrupting, at least in the beginning. So I talked about how we need to build up a very strong reinforcement history for the dog to go in the right spot. So I recommend, if you're, especially if it's a dog new to you, that you start off with at least 2 weeks of no interruptions. Now, again, going back to that step one, if you have done a really good job of managing, preventing the possibility of accidents happening, you don't have to worry about it at all, which is why I'm saying put all your eggs in that basket, right? But if they happen, and they happen, I get that. If the dog is new to you, or you're just maybe the dog's not new to you and you haven't gotten the dog house trained and you're just like, I need to figure out what to do. So, okay, we're starting day one. We're going to go 2 weeks, no interruptions. Again, prevention, and you won't have to worry about it. But if it happens, don't interrupt the dog, because interrupting a dog for pottying is very scary and weird to them. So it is punishing, which again could teach them not to go in front of you. And if your goal is to teach them to go in front of you outside, you're going to have more trouble doing it. So in those first 2 weeks, focus all of your energy in the prevention and rewarding piece. Reward that dog for every potty in the right spot, and hopefully most of them are going in the right spot. After a couple weeks where you've gotten tons of repetitions, tons of rewards, and very few, if any, accidents, then once you've got that history, you've put a bunch of deposits in that potty bank account, then if you catch them going inside, gently interrupt. And I can tell you this, but again, like I said, sometimes it all goes out the window, even for me, so I understand. But ideally, we're able to gently interrupt them as they start to go. Again, not after. After is worthless. Nothing you do after will make any difference in terms of training. So just clean it up and resolve to do better job preventing it next time. But yeah, do it gently as he starts to go. And if you can, lead them outside so that they can finish out there, so that you can reward him out there. But yeah, when it comes to potty training, even interruptions can be very tricky. So get a solid reward history first, and then do it diplomatically. I don't know. Because yeah, again, if we're talking about tricky dogs, we want to do everything that we can to set you up for success and set your dog up for success. So yeah, so accidents, if they're happening, again, start with no interruptions for 2 weeks. Let them finish, clean up the stuff afterwards, use your enzymatic cleaner, and then try gentle interruptions. But again, use it as information, right? If they're having accidents, it means that they're not ready to have that much freedom. So rein in the management again. If they've got access to more than one room and they're having accidents, they need to go back to one room, or maybe even just the pen, if not actively supervised. So that's, I think, did we cover everything? That was everything I had to talk about. So if you guys have any other questions, any things that have cropped up that you're just, how would I address this? Now is a great time to talk about them. April says, oh, fascinating. Thank you for teaching us what not to do. Yeah, when it comes to dog training, I go out there on the interwebs and TV and whatnot, and I watch other trainers and the information that's floating out there. And for some of the information, you'll get like really good tips, but if it's lacking like these extra little pieces that fill in the gaps to make it a well-rounded training plan, a lot of people, their dogs they'll come up short and they'll end up feeling frustrated. And potty training is just one of those ones that it's like, I don't want you or anybody to have to spend any more time devoted to house training than they have to. Like, this is one of those things, I mean, other than puppy socialization, if you get a puppy who's under 4 months old, socialization is priority 1. House training for puppy or adult dog, for me, is number 2. Actually, no, let me reorder that. I would say number 2 for me, scratch that, throwing everything out the window. All right, number 1 is making sure that animal trusts me, which means I don't do anything to break that trust when they first come to me. Number 2 is puppy socialization. Number 3, house training, because I'm just like, I am a neat freak. I admit, you guys, like, I've had people tell me before, like, if you have to have like a super clean and tidy home and you can't have anything out of place and blah, 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 like, don't get a dog. Unfortunately, I am that person who really, really likes to have a very clean and tidy home. But I also happen to love dogs. And so, you balance the two. But that means that I am very, what's the word? I'm a little bit obsessive, maybe, about just making sure that I have all of these pieces in place so that we get that training done as fast as possible. April says, anyway, here, let me put this up here. Any way to get our male dog not to flick his feet in the mud after he goes? He flicks dirt everywhere, including his toenails. Oh, yes, Dizzy does the same. That's a really good question. And I have never... No, I don't know. I have never tried to get it. I mean, mainly how I address that is I just get out of the way, to be honest. It's because yeah, it's for a lot of dogs. It's a natural behavior. Toenails are hard though, because then if you have to clean those, they're coming inside, and hopefully you just meant wait, you just meant dirt in the toenails. Hopefully he's actually not getting any feces in his toenails, because that would be a whole other ball game. I have had people kind of mitigate the dirt problem, just by they, in addition to their treat station by the door, they'll keep paw wipes by the door, or towel, or whatever you like to use, so that the dog is just used to anytime you come in, you wipe all their feet. It's a great way to just have a dog uh, feel that handling becomes very routine. So that's nice to do anyway. But it's also, it can be a big ask if it's just like another task you have to do. But as far as teaching them not to do that, okay, here's my thought. It would mean going back to, that those initial potty training stages where you're going out with the dog. And what I would do then is immediately, like as he finishes going, as if you were brand new, just starting potty training, get your timing and your treats and play ready to go, so that as he finishes going, whatever gets him excited, throw a ball, throw a treat somewhere else, clap and like run away so he chases you. Whatever gets your dog to move away from that spot, start all of that as he's finishing his pee or poo or whatever he's doing. As he's finishing, run, get him away from that spot, so that you interrupt that sequence. Because the way that behavior works, is like, or habits rather, is if he's in the habit of, I go poo here, then I flick, and then I move on and do my sniffies or whatever I do, you can break that chain by inserting something more fun and positive than flicking dirt into the chain. But again, it's a habit you're breaking, so you're gonna have to be consistent about it. Do it every time for at least a couple weeks. I don't know. I'm coming up with this on the fly. So if you try it, I would love to hear how it goes. But that would be the first thing I would try if I really wanted to stop that. Oh, okay. Wait. Yeah, April says the only thing I can think of is leading him with a treat or kibble right before he starts the flicking. So, okay, yeah, you're spot on. So if that's leading him with a treat or kibble could work. If it doesn't, try one of those other things. If I don't know Norin, so I don't know if he's a ball dog or a tug toy dog, or if he likes to chase you, or what kind, but you'll know him. You'll know what kinds of things get him excited. So if it's just a treat or kibble, go with that. But yes, absolutely interrupt that chain, and do it consistently, because habits, as because anytime we try to change our own habits, it's hard, right? So when it comes to dogs, the more you want to get many repetitions in a row. If there are times that he's going and flicking the dirt in between all of the other stuff, it's just going to take longer, maybe, if it works at all. I'm no guarantees that this is going to work. I really just, it's a guess, and same guess as yours, I see. So, but please, if you try it, come back and share with us. Let us know how it goes. It's a really, really good question. That was fun. That's a fun little thought experiment. Trying to come up with creative training solutions is like my jam. I love it. So if you don't, actually, there's a couple other questions I'll throw out here real quick, just because I get them often. A lot of people will ask, my male dog hit adolescence, or he's an adult now, and he started marking. How do I train for marking? And the thing is, with marking, even though the internal trigger for a dog to mark something might be different than the physical internal triggers that I just have to empty my bladder and bowels. The behavior is the same, And so the way that you would address it is exactly the same that you would address it for normal house training, with the exception that a dog who marks can never be considered empty. So when you're doing, regular house training for most dogs, they can, we talked about confined or supervised or tethered in the beginning. But as you start to loosen up the management piece, the prevention piece, they can have a little bit more freedom right after they go. We consider them empty for a period of time, and depending on your dog, that period of time will vary. So again, like with a very young puppy, if they go potty outside, they get their reward, they come back in, they might get 15 minutes of free play in the room that you have them in, before they either need to go back in the crate, back on the tether, or back outside. For other older puppies or your adult dogs, maybe their potty frequency is more closer to an hour or 2 hours, in which case, you'll figure out your dog, but that time that they get free play, and the time that maybe you're even comfortable loosening up on the supervision piece where they're able to be free, will get longer and longer. But when it comes to dogs who mark, they are never considered empty. So you need to manage that tightly for a longer period of time than when you're doing basic house training. And yes, I know that's bad news. I know that's a bummer, but that's how you treat dogs who mark indoors. It's unfortunate, but otherwise they're going to keep going. And the thing is, for marking or just peeing, it's a behavior that is inherently reinforcing, right? It's reinforced through the relief that they feel having gone, or I don't know how you describe the feeling that a dog has when they marked on something, like, haha, I don't know. But whatever internal rewards that they get for going, it reinforces the behavior of going in those spots. So if we slip up in our management, and they are getting reinforced for going in the wrong spots, which means you have to work double, triple as hard to make sure that they're getting rewarded for going outside. Because again, you just want to stack the deck in your favor. Make sure that they are getting all the rewards for going in the right spot. But yeah, marking, it really just means much tighter management as you go through a basic house training protocol. We did talk about regressions. I won't go back over that. So, okay, cool. Well, that was a lot about house training. But again, if you are watching this on the replay and you do have questions, feel free to drop them in the comments. If you have enjoyed this and would like to see more content like it, please feel free to hit the subscribe button on YouTube, or the like or follow buttons on Facebook. Ta-da! No, wait, we're over here. Subscribe. And yeah, and I would love to see you here in the next video. And also share this with anyone who might benefit from this information. Would love to see them around the community in the next video. All right, have a great one, you guys, and I'll see you on Friday.